It's hello you and good day wherever you are. I have just come back from the park with Alexander, and I met a lovely young lady by the name of Jillian, and she had her 3-year-old daughter in the park, and we just got chatting about wellness and so on. As I do, I try and share information around, and it struck me that I hadn't spoken about some of the things that I do other than the distilling of the water, which of course I spoke to her about. Um, I hadn't spoken about some of the other things that I've done, and I guess if you have been along this journey, you may have done some of this stuff. You may have done more stuff than I have. I'm learning all the time about things and natural treatments that are available to make us healthier. Definitely to live a much longer life. And when I talk about a longer life, I don't mean 5 or 10 years. I mean 50 years longer than they're saying we should be living in. 50 years of well life, not hobbled, nobbled, and a handful of pills every morning. For those who don't know, my actual name is Dave, and I have been involved in fitness in one way or another for most of my life. I did my national service. It was compulsory when I was 17, 18, 19 for 2 years. And then a little time after that, I got involved in the fitness industry and was like a fitness instructor and a gym manager and stuff like that for quite a while. And I 5 or 6 years ago, I didn't really stay in that as a career, but I always stayed interested in my own fitness and so on. But I was getting older like everybody else. I think when I was about 45, about 5 years ago, I did a refresher, or I did the modern equivalent of what you need to have to be a fitness consultant to work in the UK as an instructor. You have to have a level 2. You can get then a level 3, which is slightly higher, a little bit more knowledge and so on, a little bit more indoctrination, more like. So I did that, and I never actually applied it. I never actually worked as a fitness. I won't go into why I didn't, just from a time point of view. But I didn't. However, I am obviously fairly well schooled in the mainstream, nutrition and the mainstream way of going about exercise and fitness and so on. And I've kind of stepped away from most of that. So that's worth saying up front. I don't recommend people do many hours a week of long and slow duration exercise. I don't recommend that anymore. I recommend a bunch of different kinds of exercise. It's important that we do physical exercise on a regular basis. It's important that we do stretching on a regular basis. It's essential that we do these things, actually, for the body is a series of pipes and pumps, and you have to help the heart, you have to help the lungs, you have to help everything work, and the muscles and the tendons and so on, and the joints and all of that, they need to be flexed through their full range. And modern lifestyle means we're often sat for long periods of time and locked in certain positions, and we're not moving through the full range of positions, from bending all the way to the floor and stretching all the way up. So that said, I won't talk about too much about exercise at all. I'm really wanting to hopefully catch your attention with some ideas on what I've done, what I've offered to my family as ways to improve our health generally. So aside, and do with this information what you will. My recommendation is to do more research. If this is stuff you haven't heard before, then please do some more research on it, because I'm not an expert on these things. I've learned from other people who are far more knowledgeable than me on many of these subjects, and who've had the experience of doing them. Now, these are things that I've done. These are things that I've found to have a benefit for me, so I'm sharing them in that vein, with that intent for you to look at and consider whether or not they might help you. I'm not promoting any one product. I'm not paid by anyone, so you know, the products that I happen to have in the house may or may not be the best that are on the market, and sometimes there's a budget factor, you know, so yeah, you know, here we go. This is obviously the distiller. And this is my second water distiller. The first one only lasted a little bit more than a year before it broke down, and the family were on me like a rash. You better replace that quick, sharp, Dad. We're not drinking any more water. They were on a water strike until I got a replacement. This one's called Water Pure, and cost me 150, 160 quid. It's a 4-liter countertop distiller, and it takes 3 hours to turn what's in there, the 4 liters in there, into 4 liters of steamed, then cooled water, clear, pure water. I store it in this jug, and I store some in the fridge for cold water purposes. I do add a few drops of hydrogen peroxide, 12% hydrogen to that, just to stop any algae forming, because algae does like to form here in the sun, and to improve the oxygenation of that. And I thank my friend Lee over at Flat Earth British Sub for that information. I have to run this 2 to 3 times a day because the family enjoy using it so much. So that's the distiller. Over here, this is colloidal silver, and it's very good for helping to pull heavy metals out of your system. If you don't know that there's plenty of heavy metals in the environment, I won't go into much detail on that. There's plenty on how aluminium in body deodorants, cans of things, food, it just gets, you know, bits get into food, canned food. They even say that they spray that stuff in the air, but I don't know exactly about that. I will say that we are loaded, our bodies are loaded with heavy metals. These are very harmful to important systems. If we are electrical, as I and others suggest, then these heavy metals will cause short-circuiting, they will cause blockages, so you will start to have parts of your body that don't work anymore because the passageway, the electrical routing has been compromised by one thing and another, either the calcification or the dirt that has come from your water, or some heavy metal. So this colloidal silver you can make yourself, or look into that, or buy it. This costs about £20 for this little bottle, I think, or maybe we get 3 bottles for 20. I can't remember. 45 parts per million of silver. You can get stronger one, you know, you can get higher content, and again, that's something you should look into for yourself. I also recommend looking into the tissue salt thing, because I think we do need certain salts. We know that if we're in an electrical system, we need a salt solution for the electrical system to work best. You know, you can't pass an electrical current through this distilled water because there's no particulate within it. So you do need salts in your body. Schussler came up with this knowledge, and he divides the salt into 12 key salts, and they're kind of aligned to the astrological signs and so on. So it's worth looking into your own birth sign and which salts you might be deficient in. Everyone knows echinacea. This is, you know, obviously you can get this in better or worse forms, tinctures and other types of ways of doing it. And I think having that on a regular basis is important. I've been a bit slack on this, but I can tell you that's definitely worth doing. This one's a bit hardcore. Oh, this one's a bit hardcore. This is, gee whiz, turpentine. And it's only a tiny bottle that I got here. I got this in America, from America. This company with a suspicious G on the logo, but they're meant to be the best makers of turpentine. I would say, so long as it's organic, virgin, pure gum spirits, that's what you're looking for. Pure gum spirits, and make sure you do your research and your homework on this, because I think you need to take a limited amount. Typically it's like 5-10 drops, you know, it's not very much at all at a time. And this bottle lasted me for like a week of treatment, you know. And it turns out that we do have parasites in our bodies that you want to expel, and you will notice them. I promise you, you will notice them leaving the house. When you take this, parasites will leave the building the very next day, and you'll be very glad they're gone. So I won't say much more on that. But I think before you do the parasite cleansing, it's worth making sure you've kind of given yourself a good old enema. I know that's a little hard to hear, but for me anyway, it was a real tough thing to kind of get my head around. I've been doing it for about a year now, and I have to say it's a huge health benefit. But before you do the turpentine, before you do that, that's why the government put blue shit in it. In South Africa, we used to see the African men like straining it through bread. We'd be like, why are they doing that? And that's a weird drug thing they were doing, But actually, they were clearing themselves of parasites. Some of the cultures in Africa have not had all of the knowledge robbed from them, and so some of them know this stuff intrinsically, But your great-great-grandparents knew this stuff too. Pine oil comes from the pine tree. The pineal gland. Remember that? We've all learned about the pineal gland in the center of the brain, and apparently it's been calcified by the shit in your water, particularly fluoride. Pine oil, pineal gland, which has pine cones and all of that stuff associated with it. Apparently this is very good for clearing the pineal gland. But clear your bowels before you do that, okay? Because, my lord, when those critters leave the building, it can get rather messy, and there might be like what some people say, like a die-off. They call it a die-off, where you have a vast colony. If you've done none of the other cleansing before, you've got a vast colony of these snot creatures dwelling in your bowels, filling up the pipework like you would not believe, like a horror show. I swear to the creator, it is true. Most of us are riddled with parasites, and so before you do any kind of heavy cleansing, just clear the pipework a little bit, okay? Because people say they can kind of come up the top way. They can if they can't get out the back door, they might try and find another way around. And that would be there's some horror stories on that. But so do the cleansing. This will help you with the cleansing. Chlorella, it's probably one of the best you can get here in the UK. I don't know about anywhere else in the world, but organic chlorella powder. Do that, and do the activated charcoal. Okay, because that's apparently it's very good at attaching itself to sort of the heavier things that lie in the cracks and the grooves and the craters and stuff in the intestinal tract. It's like a vacuum cleaner's hose pipe or a pool cleaner's hose pipe down there. Far more complex and far more riddled with folds and villi and little cracks and crannies for things to kind of visit in for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. They'll just sit there impacted into the kind of walls of your bowel, and it's heavy metals, and perhaps it's lead, or perhaps it's aluminium, and perhaps it's seeping like a poison into your body. Well, this is apparently very good at sucking it, clinging to it, and then causing it to be sort of heavy enough to be caught up in the tide of sludge as it moves out your back passage on a daily basis. Anyway, so that's some of my top health tips. I am inspired to have done it because this young lady, Jillian, 40-year-old mum, in good condition, good health, looking in good health, but you can tell that there's many things that could quite quickly sort of shave 5 or 10 years off that aging thing and hold it off, and therefore hold her in a much healthier state, and perhaps even be able to have another child, because she was saying she couldn't or wasn't sure she'd be able to have another child and so on. Doctors have said this and that and the rest, and I'm like, if you can clean your body up and you get the blockages, all those electrical systems stop blocking up, then I think the chances of a person being fertile is increased many times over. So none of these things are guaranteed, of course, but the odds are, we're poisoning ourselves. We're putting, the blockages are being created by the dirty water and the heavy metals and other toxins in the system. So it's about being able to pull them out using the negative ions of the distilled water. Some of these other things like the colloidal silver and the activated charcoal, and then maybe getting a little bit more heavy duty with something like the pine oil, and also the MMS. If you've looked into MMS, the sodium chlorate, it's a bit like what you might use to balance the pH level of a swimming pool. If you're getting like an algae, and a lot of people nowadays talk about cancers being a form of a fungi, and if you're wanting to beat back the fungi that have perhaps started to form in this body, which is mostly water, then perhaps it needs to be something as strong as strong and as potent as MMS. But do the research on these things, and hopefully this helps you. You can pass it on to a friend who might be thinking they're becoming unwell. If I can share this slightly personal, but it's a very personal thing, is like 3 years ago I thought that I was maybe getting a cancer. I was getting my foot had gone dead, a part of my foot had gone numb, and I was getting these very sharp pains in the bone of one of my legs. Actually, it started coming into the other leg too, but since I've taken control of these things, that pain and numbness has gone away. So, and perhaps other marks and moles and stuff have shrunk in size and so on. Again, this is only something you'll know when you try it for yourself. So I hope that information is helpful. Hope you have a fantastic day.